Welcome back to this FileMaker video tutorial, the third video in the Working with Data series. This one we're going to look at finding records in your database. My name's David Head. I'm a consulting engineer for FileMaker based in the Sydney office in Australia. This video is based on the Lessons 3 and 4 of the FileMaker Training Series Basics, which can be downloaded from our website. And during this video we'll be using the contacts database file that is provided with the FileMaker Training Series. We'll run through a number of topics in this video. We'll start off with introducing find mode and what that's all about. We'll look at some single and multiple request searches, and then some more complex ideas of extending, constraining found sets and omitting records. And finally we will have a look at using operators like greater than, less than and range operators in your find requests for doing more complex searching. So let's get on with it. Okay, so this is the contacts file. If you watched the previous video you would have known that I deleted all the records in this, so this is a backup copy of that file and we're back to the start. When you're generally working with FileMaker databases, you will spend most of your time in one of the four modes called Browse mode. When we look in the View menu, there are four modes in FileMaker. Browse mode that we're in at the moment with the tick beside it, Find mode, Layout mode, this is where you design the user interface, and Preview mode where you might go to see what you're about to print. So in this video we're going to be talking about the second of these, and that's Find mode. Now there are a number of ways to get yourself into Find mode, and you do that to create a find request to carry out a search of your database records. One way of course would be to choose this menu command from the View menu. Another way would be to use the keyboard shortcut Command or Control F. Another way would be to come down here to the bottom of the screen and to choose Find from this pop-up menu here. And yet another way would be to click this Find button in the status area. So whichever way you do it, doesn't really matter, whichever is more convenient for you at the time, you need to get into Find mode to start creating search requests. So if we do just a simple search request, click on this Find button here, gets us into Find mode. Now one of the things you'll notice about the contacts starter solution that we're using in this video is that the appearance of the layout changes between Browse mode and Find mode, and this has been specifically done by the developer to help the user to understand that they are in Find mode and not, for example, creating a new blank record. So in this case we're going to do a simple search. We're going to search for someone whose first name starts with A. So very simple one field search here, and we can click the Perform Find button to perform that search. Instantly what we find is that we have a found set of 8 records, and we'll find as we scroll through these records that all of these people's first name starts with A. So we have Anne, Annie, Arthur, Annette, Alan, Audrey, Anthony, Annie. So let's immediately do another find. We'll click on the Find button again, and in this case we're going to go to the Group field and choose the group of professionals in our database and click to perform the find. So now we have a found set of 31 records, and it's important to note that this search has overridden our previous search. So it is not a progressive search in that we didn't find all the professionals whose name started with A. What FileMaker did, since we did just a standard search, is it went back to the entire found set of 57 records and performed the search on that. So as we scroll through here, immediately we can find someone whose name does not start with A, but of course they are in the group of professionals in our database. So this is an important thing to understand about searches within FileMaker. One of the things that you can do after you've done a search and got a found set is click the Show All button, but that is not necessary if you are going to immediately go on and do another search, because every search that you do naturally overrides any previous found set that you may have created. Two more points about FileMaker Searches that I would make at this point is firstly that FileMaker Searches are not case sensitive. If we perform a find for cities starting with S, which is going to be a lowercase s, perform that find, then we still get South Lake even though it's a capital S. The second point is that FileMaker performs naturally searches where it searches for words beginning with. So in that case it would not have found any cities necessarily that had a word that contained S, only words that start with S. And in this case, if we did a search for the letter L, so perform a search here for the letter L and perform the find, we still find South Lake Tahoe because FileMaker has searched all the records in that field for words beginning with the letter L. So a couple of important points about searches. A convenient and quick search that you may want to perform is a search where you're looking for matching records. In this case we have Ryan Carter's record on screen. If we were interested in all of the Ryans in our database, we could hold down the Control key on a Mac or right click on a Windows machine and select Find Matching Records. So what this is doing is performing a search where there are records that match this particular record that we're on at the moment. So if we perform that search, we can see that now we have a found set of 2 records and both of these records are Ryan. So what about if we want to be more specific about the person that we're looking for? In this case, I'd like to search for a man by the name of Robert, but I'm only interested in a Robert who is a friend of mine. So if I did a search simply for Robert, I may come up with 3 of them, and this is a personal record. This is Robert Webb is a friend, and Robert Warren is a professional associate. So in order to narrow down the search to Roberts who are my friend, I can do a search for both Robert in this field and friend in this field. So again we have a single request, but in this case we're filling out 2 fields, and this is known as a logical AND request, where we're searching for people whose first name is Robert and belong to the group of friends. So perform that find and we find just 1 record, Robert Webb. Now what about if we're looking for people by the name of Robert and people by the name of Ryan? We know that there are 2 Ryans in our database and we know that there are 3 Roberts in our database. And we could do those searches separately and find that out as we have done in the past. But how do we do it in a single search operation? Well, we create a find and we type a name that we're looking for, Ryan. Now if we typed Robert in here as well, this find would find no one, simply because there is no one in our database named Ryan and Robert at the same time. So we'll modify this find and delete the Robert part. So the first request in this case is for Ryan, and we're going to go ahead and create a new request. It's similar to creating a new record, but this is a find request. So the second request is to be for Robert. So our first request is for Ryan and our second request is for Robert. Effectively, this is a logical OR search. We're searching in that same field and we're saying find me all of the records whose first name is Ryan or whose first name is Robert. When we perform the find, we find those 5 records who of course are Ryan and Robert. Okay, so the last most complex multiple request search that we're going to perform is one where it is effectively a logical not search. So in this case, what I'd like to know is all of the professional people in my database, and if we perform that find, we'll find that there are 31 of those, but I would like to exclude from that list of 31 all the professionals who are based in the state of California. So there are probably quite a lot of those, but there are some of the professionals outside the state of California as well. So how do we construct this? Remember, what we're trying to find are professionals like Maria who live outside the state of California. So in find mode, we're going to choose the professionals as a request, so basically saying find the professionals, and then we're going to create a new request for people in the state of California, and up here in the status toolbar, click the omit command. So what this is saying is the first record is including all of the professionals, and the second request is omitting all of those people from California. So we perform that find and we have found 14, and if we scroll through those we'd find that none of those are from California. Just to prove the point, by simple maths, that would tell us that there are 17 records out of the 31 that are professionals in California. So if we find all of the records who are professional and in California, our maths is correct in that we found the 17 records. So there are 31 records for professionals, there are 17 of those in California and 14 of those elsewhere. Now remember the point I made earlier that each progressive search or find in a FileMaker database tends to override the previous find. So just as a review, how would we find all the people who were in the state of California, Nevada and Arizona? Well, it's a logical OR search, so we would do a find for people in California, new request, Nevada, new request, Arizona, and perform that find. So we had 3 requests and we ended up with 50 records, people who were in California, Nevada or Arizona. So that was a logical OR search. Now what about if we had already done a search for all of the people in California? So we have 36 people there. So there are obviously 14 more people who live in Nevada and Arizona. If we simply did a search now for people who live in Nevada and pressed perform find, that would override our previous search for California. But what I want to do in this instance is I want to add the people from Nevada to the people who I'd already found in California. So I can go to the request menu and extend the found set. So instead of simply performing the find, which would override my previous found set, I'm going to extend this found set with the people from Nevada. So now I have 40 people in there, and this includes people from California and Nevada. And I'll do another search, find people in Arizona, and again, rather than performing the find, I'm going to again extend the found set. And finally, that extends to the 50 records of the people that we know are in California, Nevada, and Arizona. Now we can do the opposite to that as well. If we had already found a set of records such as these, and we decided that we wanted to exclude the people from Nevada, we could perform a find for Nevada, and in this case we're going to, if we constrain the found set, what that would do effectively is take those 50 records and constrain it only to the people in Nevada. So what we need to do here is to make this an omit request. We're saying we have these 50 people and I want to omit all the people from Nevada out of that 50 people by constraining the found set. Quite a few concepts involved in there, but what we're trying to do here is just demonstrate that you can do complex finds and progressive finds in FileMaker. One final thing that you might want to do is to manually groom a list of records that you've found. So let's say, for example, we were going to do a visit to the state of Nevada, and we have 4 people in our database here, and we can manually decide whether we want to leave them on the list or not. So Steve's someone that I haven't caught up with for a while, so I'll leave him on the list. I'll navigate to the next record. Bobby, well, I actually spoke to him last week and he visited me at my office, so what I'm going to do here is to omit him from this list. And then Kathleen, I haven't spoken to her for a while, so I'll catch up with her as a friend. And Elizabeth, another person who, yep, I will visit her. And what we've ended up with, by searching for all the people, first of all, in Nevada, secondly, we've come up with a set of 3 records because we've manually groomed the list down to the ones that we didn't want in there with the omit command. So remember I mentioned earlier, if we move back to the contact details screen, that when you do a find in FileMaker, that the natural search is a search of words beginning with. So the more you type in, the narrower that search becomes. For example, if we type in a W here, in the last name a W, so we're going to search for people whose last name starts with W and perform that find. We find 10 records. But if we enter more information, if we find people whose last name starts with W-A-L, so starting with W-A-L, perform that find, we find just 2 people. So one of the things that I teach people is that you should probably be as lazy as you possibly can when you're doing searches. If you were searching for Donald Wallace, there's not a lot of point typing the entire word when you can really narrow down the search fairly effectively with just a few letters. Now, as we mentioned before also, that those sort of searches do not include people whose name contains those letters. So there are a few wildcards that we can use in searches. So for example, if we wanted to search for people whose name contained the letters ACE, if we did a search for ACE and performed that find, we wouldn't find anyone because no one's name starts with ACE. If we modify that find and put in a wildcard here, so we can see a list of operators in here and a wildcard for 0 or more characters, effectively what this search is doing is it's saying find me all the people whose name ends in ACE. So perform that find and we find Donald Wallace. If we did a search for say ALL, no records match the criteria because no one's last name starts with ALL, but if we modify that find and put a wildcard at the start, an asterisk at the start, perform that find, we find Phyllis Hall, whose name ends with ALL. We also know that Wallace is in there as well, but he didn't come up in that search because his name didn't end with ALL. So the broader search that we can do for effectively a string anywhere in a field is to put in an asterisk, meaning 0 or more missing characters, the search that we wanted to do, and then an asterisk, meaning there may be 0 or more missing characters at the end of that. So this is the letters ALL anywhere in that field in any of the records. Perform the find and we come up with Phyllis Hall and Donald Wallace. Now unfortunately for this last demonstration I didn't have the fields required, so I've taken the liberty of making some modifications to the file, creating a couple of extra fields that I need, being date of birth, next birthday and age today. So with numeric and date data we can do some useful range searches. So for example, in this case we have the date of birth for someone. We can do a find and find out all of the people who were born between, say, 1970 ... 1975. So this is an operator known as a range operator, which is simply 3 periods or full stops, and can find the range of data in the field. So perform that find and we end up with 8 records, all of whom were born between 1970 and 1975 inclusive. Of course we can do a more simple search by saying find me all the people who were born after or greater than the 1st of the 1st 1970 and perform the find. Now that, because we use the greater than symbol and not the greater than or equal to symbol, that would specifically not include anyone who was born on the 1st of January in 1970. So when you look in find mode, it's a good thing to investigate all of the operators that are available and to use combinations of these to do more complex searches of your database. So that's it for this Finding Records video. In this video we've covered the simple introduction to find mode and performing single and multiple search requests, including some more complex ones, logical AND searches, logical OR searches, and even NOT searches, using extend, constrain and omit to modify found sets that were existing, and finally ending up using some operators in requests. It's by no means a total investigation of what we can do in find mode, but it will certainly get you started. So I'll meet you in the next video for sorting records.